Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode here of Energy of the Untamed Heart podcast. I'm your host, Miel Fox, and my guest today is Sivani Ishaya. That's hard for me. I actually had to say, could you say that for me two times? Because sometimes my lips and my tongue kind of tangle up a little bit, but it is an absolutely gorgeous name. And I am going to pick your brain like, what does that translate into? Because I have a name that also translates, and I always find it very interesting the stories behind people's names or where they come from or where they live or what they do. There's always a good story in something. So we're going to talk about that today. We're going to talk a little bit about how do we choose to honor our the essences of everything that we are, our spiritual self, our physical self, our emotional and mental selves in how we move through our day. And some of that is through the teachings that Shivani is going to discuss with us in Ayurvedic teachings, as well as she has a new baby project that she's working on. I can't wait to share that. And this is an audio podcast, but I got to tell you, of all the interviews that I do, this lady's background behind her Zoom is to die for, drop dead gorgeous. So I'm also going to let her tell us where that is and what it is, because if you've got some time and some drivability, spendability, this picture is phenomenal. So with that, Sivani Ishaya, welcome. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I can't wait to dive in and explore all sorts of health and wellness. And, the thing that I loved about your show is how do we get more in tune with ourselves, and that just really resonates with me.
Yeah, I think we've got one journey, one trip, one spin on the merry-go-round, and oftentimes we wait to take care of ourselves until the much later years where it becomes a lot harder, it's a lot more difficult to work through all the things, and we're less malleable, not just physically, but oftentimes a little stuck in our ways. That old adage of, the older you are, the more you become of what you are. Well, unfortunately, that's not always good. Sometimes if you're a couch potato, maybe you become more of a couch potato. I don't know. So I can't wait to dive in on all things wellness. I'm going to start with, you told me before we hit record that your name was given to you in your spiritual journey. And I know, as sure as the sun comes up, that there is a meaning behind your name. And I would be thrilled if you would share that with us.
Yeah, so my name is like the direct translation could be she who leads to Shiva. So Shiva in Eastern tradition is the unmanifest. There's a lot of stories wrapped around the deity of Shiva. But basically, if you study meditation and expanded conscious awareness, it means the unmanifest, pure potential. So that like primordial soup before anything bubbles up that has everything in perfect balance. And so my name means leads to that. But there's also another translation, which is wife of. So it would be wife of that particular essence. And when it was given to me, I was 30 years old. I was a little disillusioned. I was a housewife of three children and was in a very unhappy marriage. I was very, very, like I said, disillusioned. I was like, my entire life I was raised to be a housewife. That was the only thing that was important. And all of a sudden, here I was, and my husband could care less about me. Just I was like the servant, or I needed to dress, I needed to look a certain way, I needed to be a certain way if he was going to take me anywhere with him, all of those sorts of things. And it just began to crush me. So as I dove into my spiritual practice, that was the name that my teacher decided was a good one for me to use as a tool to remember that that type of love was not enough for me, that mine was of pure potential, of perfect balance, of endless support, regardless of what it was that I did or how I behaved, that I would always be loved by that pure foundational aspect of consciousness.
It's beautiful. It's really beautiful. And I think there are many listeners, men and women, but I'm going to say probably a lot of the ladies out there who can probably very much resonate with your story. You and I are a few decades apart, but I know my mother was raised with, you grow up and you get married and you have kids, and that is how you're defined. You're defined externally by these things. You're someone's wife, you're someone's mother. I mean, you're never who you are. You're never you. You're always somebody else's something else. And even fast forward, I can remember oh my gosh, this is decades ago. My very first living event that wasn't a dormitory or an apartment, I shared a house with somebody, like shared on paper a house with somebody. And whenever someone said, "Oh, where do you live?" and I would describe the location, they would say, "Oh, that's so and so's house," the other half.
Yeah.
And I would say, "Yeah, no, that's the house that I pay 50% of and the house that I live in." And so, no, that is where we choose to reside. So I just think it's so interesting to me how we get perceived externally and how we get put into these boxes of you're someone's partner, spouse, lover, whatever the thing is, mother, sister, brother. And at very infrequent times are we just who we are. And then you go into the next thing of you're defined by, oh, so tell me, what do you do? Okay, well, I'm a being. I'm not a doing. I'm a being. So it's not that I can't tell you what I do, but it isn't define who I am. It happens to be one of a multitude of gifts and skills that I'm able to utilize and share, but it isn't who I am. And
Hmm.
so I love that this journey that you found yourself on has probably, woven a pathway to where you are now, that we are all untapped potential. I mean, truthfully, there's probably more available presentations of how we might show up in this journey, in this lifetime, and we're just exhibiting one of. The one that we happen to be projecting in the moment is the one that we experience. But truth be told, you don't like it, turn the damn channel, pick a different one, go so turn on a different movie. I mean, that's really the gig. So
Yeah.
as you took your spiritual journey, and I'm sure you didn't suddenly go from, hey, I'm leaving the marriage and the whole thing to where you are now. Did you find that your best or most reliable mentoring, or I don't want to say crutch because that's not the word I'm looking for, support system to get you to where you are now was through your spiritual awakening, through your personal growth?
Yes and no, because the beautiful thing about my spiritual development is that I had a beautiful balance of the part that supports and then the part that wants to tear you apart, tear you down. And that happened like seamlessly and beautifully in those. I spent about 17 years, probably 13 as in a life full of service. And during that time I had an individual who was always putting me in positions only to tear me down, while another was putting me in those same positions and asking me to redefine myself and constant, like exactly what you're talking about. So this is how you showed up on this particular one, but that doesn't mean anything. Let's do it again. Let's redefine again. And his favorite thing to say with me is, and to others who were always very challenged with me, is she's just in the midst of a creative endeavor. Man, I had it was on the top of my tongue because he says it in a particular way, and it's not coming out probably because it's his word, but it was that the embodiment of everything that we're doing is just creative play. So what difference does it
Mhm.
make whether she is expressing herself this way or she's expressing herself that way? And like I said, I came from a very male dominated, and so it was the masculine figure in that time of my life that was like play. Just you haven't had any time to determine who you are. And then the feminine aspect of that period of my time was very controlling and domineering. And I feel like that gave me a lot and showed me a lot about who it was that when I wanted to come forward. And I often do work mostly with women, and it's exactly what you're talking about. It doesn't matter what you've done or how far you've come or what age you're at. If you want to play and experience something different or new about yourself, then I'm there with you. Let's hands down. Let's play. Let's create. You want to be healthier? Let's find a way that works for you, that resonates and aligns with you and your story and your expression. Because there are no absolutes in this world.
Yeah, there's absolute. Well, there are only a couple absolutes, and you don't want any of them. Death and taxes are two on the top of the list, but you don't really want to go down that road. Why? Because we're here. We're here for it. We're here for the fun. We're here for the tears. We're here for all of it. I mean, it's an experience because that's exactly what it is. If it was all a joyride, then I hate to say it, where would be the fun in that? Because you need the contrast in order to recognize the other side or to appreciate the other side of that.
Yeah.
So even though, many of us have experienced either the aha moments or the dark night of the souls or, the two by four planks, whatever phrase one wants to put to it, but those are the moments that are actually, to me, the breakthrough moments. They're the moments that give you a message that says, "Hey, listen, it's time for you to take another twist and turn in the journey. It's time for you to up level. It's time for you to find a different pathway here and deviate off what you think is the straight and narrow." And in so doing is the beauty of the exploration, is the beauty of the journey, because ultimately we all end up at the same destination, truthfully. So it's what's happening between A and B is really where all the good stuff is going on.
Mhm.
So I really think that's really, really beautiful. I will say that I do think some people hear the term of I can't get it out of my lips. Ayurvedic, okay, help me out.
Are you Vedic?
Living. Yeah, thanks. I want to put an extra two R's in there. Why is
Uh-huh.
that? I don't know, but okay, I want it to have two R's. I think some people think, "Oh, I can't do that. That's too whatever. It's too confining. It's too restrictive. Oh, I can't do that with my family. I can't do that at my job." So, can you speak to that a little bit for people who realize, "Hey, I'm aware that there's something else going on with me, that I have the capacity to make other choices, what I do, how I do it, how I eat, how I consume beverages, whatever, have the awareness of, oh, this is my overall constitution. This is the tendency for what I have." And you hear people express it in other terms. Like you'll hear people say things like, oh, I don't do well in whatever hot climates, or I can't stand to wear shoes on my feet after April 1st, or I don't know, whatever they tell you. And that's really them speaking of that piece that I know you're going to bring forward in a moment of how do we sort of understand how we're put together, each of us individually, and what are those tendencies, and how do we use the wisdom and knowledge that you're going to share a little bit of to help us understand the framework so that we can be the best within our framework of how we're here.
Yeah, you said appreciate, and that is the first part, which is how do we do something if, especially if we feel or if we've ever experienced it as being very rigid or defined. And sometimes when you start looking at Ayurveda and exploring, diving into those rabbit holes, if you will, that it can feel very controlling. In fact, I've spent 5 years now getting a bachelor's and now master's degree in Ayurveda. And during my bachelor's degree, I made myself sick with all of the knowledge because I was going to apply it and I was going to push myself through all of this. And luckily, I had very wise teachers, some great Vajas from India that were able to help connect those dots to me is that essentially the only purpose or value in Ayurveda is to bring balance back to our physiology, our minds, our emotions, all of those things. And when we're in balance, then things flow perfectly. We don't need to be told when to eat or what to eat. We would just know. So there's a period of time where it can be very beneficial where somebody who has trained in this and sees, like you were talking about, constitution, so they have the ability to see not only our constitution of our body, but the constitution of all of the elements around us. So oftentimes we can be, I'll just break it down a little bit. There are three common constitutions, which are called doshas. And one of them is vata, which is a mixture of air and space. They're typically very thin. They don't have a lot of covering on their bodies. So they're very bony, and they can also be very flighty, but they're extremely creative individuals. They move really fast. Another one is pitta. It's fire and water. And so those are very dynamic, but very like sharp and focused individuals. And then the third is kapha. So that's water and earth. And those are very stable, strong, loving, forgiving individuals. So everybody has all of these in them. And ideally, that's the goal, is to have all three of those come to balance inside of us, regardless of what we were born with or what our choices have done. And so when I'm working with individuals, I take a very creative and maybe more a psychological and spiritual approach to this, because again, it didn't work for me to follow rigid, rules and stuff. I do gain a lot out of regularity and commitment, but it's only when I'm able to do that because I want to, because it's something that's enlivening and inspiring in my own world. Anytime I try to do something because it's the right thing, then I end up being sick. And the beautiful thing is that's what Ayurveda teaches us, that when we eat, if we're eating judgment, if we're eating I shoulds or whatever, then that's what you're tainting even the best food with that kind of emotion. So again, that's my approach on it, is to see how we can lovingly use the ancient. It's 5,000 years old, and it's still, medical science is still catching up to the brilliance that's in that. But how do we lovingly embrace that in a way that's practical and realistic, so that you're loving your life, not you're picked up another dogma and another religion or something like that that you have to torture yourself with.
Yeah, and I think it's so interesting because you say, when I did it, if it was, oh, this is the thing you're supposed to do, I became unwell. And I think that is so, it's so simplistically elegant and beautiful in its expression, but yet we have a tendency in our humanness and our busyness to overlook that. And the message is, if this is not aligning for you, if this is not making your body feel better, if this is not making your heart feel better, then don't do it. Like, don't do it, don't eat it, don't drink it, don't do it, don't think it, don't whatever. I mean, it's like, duh, if it doesn't feel good, don't do the thing. And that's a different doesn't feel good than, oh, I went running and my legs are a little sore kind of thing. But yet, if you look at many of, and myself included, in society, we write off and overlook the thing. Oh, I just had a bad night's sleep. When reality, I probably had 40 years of bad night sleeps. Hello, you know, one night maybe, 40 years, maybe not so much, right? But you write it off as age, as hormones, as this, as that, whatever. Or, oh gosh, I've got heartburn and my belly's been aching me, or whatever somebody says, and we're so quick to say, oh, I got Tums for that,
Mhm.
or take a little Prozac, or take a little this, or have a little that, or maybe a scoop of yogurt will make it better. Whatever you hear in people speaking, instead of, oh, let's take a look at why that might be. Let's
Yeah.
see what else is behind that. Let's see, is this truly a physical thing that you just ate a pound of butter on an empty stomach? Or is it that, you've been stuffing and burying years of stories and emotional difficulties, and now you got a belly ache, that
Yeah.
sort of thing. And so I think the awareness that, as you're describing these different three constitutions to every human body, and how we move through our body, in our body, I think it's very interesting that it brings awareness that there are multiple components to the health picture. It's
Yeah.
not just, did you eat a pepperoni pizza? Don't get me wrong, that could be part of it, but I think it goes a little bit deeper than that. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
really, really beautiful. So when someone comes to you and says, yeah, I think something's not quite right here, now what? And you say that you tend to approach things with a more of a psychological push. How does that play out? Do you do an assessment from all the four planes of
Yes.
energetic being?
Mhm. Yeah,
Okay.
essentially that would be like the way that I would begin is very much in the traditional way, is asking what is it that you're doing? What does your day look like? What are your, what are the favorite things? Where are the challenges? What are the things that are holding you back? Typically that's the thing that's drawing them to me anyway. So we dive into that. And if you've tried to make changes, where have you made those changes? What worked and what didn't work? All of those things are carrying aspects of those energies, those signs. And so, like I said, 5 years studying it, when somebody speaks, it just comes right into me, and I hear this, and this. And essentially, what I'm looking for is too much, too little. Ayurveda is big on that we do. Like, let's say it's touch. Some of us have way too much touch, and other of us recoil away from it. So those that have, not enough, need to begin to learn how to have safe, nurturing, soothing touch because our physiology needs that. That helps turn on the parasympathetic nervous system, which helps us heal, which helps us, well, feel good in our skin. We times. So that would be like the first is once I get a picture, then I have an idea of what the main imbalance is, and we begin to work on correcting that. But like I said, it never works for me. And I've tried it multiple times now, and it never works. When I say, okay, you need to X, Y, and Z, I guarantee you, hands down, if I do that, you won't come and see me again. But what does work is, for example, if it was something about the Vata constitution or the errant space, which typically means that we're overstimulated, we're doing way too much, way too often, and it's all over the place, nothing regular. So then I would say, all right, so what's one thing that we can do in the next week that you can do every single day? That's not going to be hard for you to do. Just find one thing. And typically that will have within a week they'll have some experience. Within a month they're going to have a very powerful experience of what it's like to just commit to one thing regular, because when you do everything sporadic and all over the place, then one thing is a pretty big impact. And oftentimes I do prefer to do that, again, from learning from my own lesson, is when you try to change too much too fast, that also throws your body into fight or flight, and nothing happens, nothing changes. That's why people go on diets, and they are great for a month, and then that's it. They're right back in the exact same thing. So we need to learn how to, through our conscious awareness, through communication. That's the other part that I love about working one-on-one or in my group sessions, is it's a community that's there supporting you, that's understanding, that knows what it's like, and it's not you're bad, you're not being shamed. Okay, so that didn't work. Let's get creative. What do we need to do? Where do we need to play to begin creating that change, creating that comfort in your own skin so that you can just, like you said, be the vibrant, amazing spark of life that you are here to be.
I think we lose sight of that as the heaviness of the world if we allow it to sort of weighs upon us. We get wrapped up in all of the human things, the careers and the jobs and the retirement funds and what's going on in the politics and what does so and so say or do or think. And in all of that doing, I feel like we forget the essence of who we are is at the crux of the being. And we are our ultimate being, apart from being sparks of love, is my personal belief. But I also feel like we're really here to be creative. That's really the gig. I mean, what are you here for? You're here to express your version of creativity in such a way that it fulfills you, and your creativity serves as the ripple that will shift the collective ultimately. Might be one heart at a time, but it'll shift eventually. And so I think those reminders are just so key. I am curious. So I'm absolutely one of those people that I can stick with something for a window, and then, life gets in the way again. And you find that you were doing whatever, 15 minutes of sitting quietly and doing your breathing, and then all of a sudden that's out the door. So, do you find that when you work either in group or one on one, that you have a window where the clients are, yep, 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 got it, got it, got it. And then there's sort of I'll just call it the complacency window or I don't know. I don't know. There's like a place where it's sort of the not so sweet spot where you fall off the wagon.
Yeah.
And how do you find that? What is the best way for you to help your clients get back on the wagon?
Yeah, well, the main place is that I start with, and I'm sure any successful coach does, is that we build trust so that they feel comfortable and confident to come and be like, all right, well, I didn't do it, or to own up to those types of things. And from there, again, I am also one of those individuals that I may not be able to do the exact same thing for the rest of my life. I have a lot of that creativity in me, as mentioned earlier, that was something that was finally nurtured in me instead of shamed. So one of the things that I would do in that particular instance is there was a result that we were creating. That's what got you to do it for as long as you did, right? Let's say it was sit for 15 minutes in stillness or in some form of meditation or listening to great music or something like that. And then all of a sudden that isn't resonating with you anymore. Then that's where the creative play starts coming in. All right, well, we saw the benefits of doing something like that in your life, but the tool doesn't have to be the same, and your tool doesn't have to be the same as my tool. So let's start playing. Let's start developing. Again, this is where I veer away a lot from some of the traditional Ayurvedic approaches because it may be, you need to X, Y, and Z. But again, if you feel forced, if you feel controlled into anything, then how am I supposed to know what's the best thing for you? So I'm always pointing people back to their inner intelligence and diving in like a cat would play with a yarn ball, and let's whack that baby around and see what comes out of it, and let's explore, let's try some things. And then from there, then that's where I have found that clients either develop a tool bag so then they know what to pull at the particular moment that speaks well with them. But the other main thing that they develop is setting down the self-flagellation, I believe it's called, like where you're whipping yourself
Yeah,
and
yeah.
tearing up your skin and all of that stuff. That's not helping anybody.
Right. Yeah, for sure. So, do you find other than the group environment being where there's group support when you're in a group, obviously it's why it's called group, but from a teaching or a coaching perspective, do you find that easier or is it different for you to do a one-on-one versus a group event where you're going to have everybody's at a different place. Everybody has a different need, everybody has a different, call it problem or concern. And how do you find that you take the overarching themes to be able to apply to the group as opposed to a one-on-one situation?
Yeah, I would say that obviously my favorite is working with an individual one at a time because then mm, their particular case is brought to the surface more and we can dive into that deeper. However, I do know that there are certain individuals, whether it be at a time in their life. So, for example, if they've worked with me one-on-one for a while, that they do better when we start putting them in the group environment. This helps to validate their own inner intelligence because they're speaking it. For example, I do a soulful marketing, which just came out of nowhere, but there's a couple individuals that are in that, and they often get to this place where they've shushed me, and now they're going back and forth and they're really diving into all of that, and I love it because I feel like, again, that's pulling forward the main thing I really want to support my clients with, and that is their connection to their inner knowing, their inner intelligence, and step boldly into that. Because everybody, it doesn't matter whether you have a degree, whether you've had 20 years of experience, oftentimes children will come up with the most beautiful answers to all sorts of things. So the more receptive we can be in our conversations, the better anyways. So like I said, oftentimes in the group scenarios, I'm amazed and I'm taught things in those situations as well.
Yeah, I think what I really do like about a group scenario is there's two things. I think there's back and forth between different individuals, and so where we all learn at our own wherever our level of learning is. And I don't mean level like fast, slow, but like how we take information in is really what I'm saying. So when you're in a group, you see different versions, different perspectives, different presentations. And so I think sometimes you can hear the same thing by five different individuals, but the one that resonates most readily with you is that's when you're going to go, oh, I get it, even though perhaps you've heard it half a dozen times previously. So I love that piece in a group setting. The other thing that I have found from coaching that I have done for people is in a group setting, sometimes there's two sides to this. Sometimes people feel more comfortable because they realize they're not alone in their situation. So they feel validated in what they perceive to be their concern and that they're seen and heard. And so that promotes a little more openness in conversation discussion and actually kind of ownership of where are you in your journey. But I've also seen the flip side where people are still hung up with how will I be judged? What will people think? And those are the folks that I find the one-on-one helps them to get started so that they can gain the confidence to let go of the fear of the judgment to be able to be supported in a group environment. And I'm just
Yeah.
curious if you see that with your coaching, with your training, teaching people these three components or three, the triad of each individual.
Yeah, hands down. And that obviously there are some people who like just as part of their constitution, they are more geared to like say a group, somebody who has a lot of dynamic, they feel very intelligent to begin with, regardless. I'm reading this book by a doctor, and that was one of his main things is that he hates to be the anything less than the smartest person in the room, but he's always the most enlivened when he finds that other people have more knowledge than he does. That would be one of those pitta, that fire individuals, so that they may thrive in that type of environment where if somebody is a little bit has more anxiety or maybe has more depression, which could be on either of the other extremities, air and space or fire and water, I mean, earth and water, that they may need a little bit of nurturing and making sure that they do feel safe and secure before going in, especially if there's going to be those very bold individuals. Luckily for me, when I've created groups, it has worked out very beautiful. Like there are counterparts, they're ready to be in that group before they get into that group. And then I can draw that to their attention so that they can see that, because my constitution is kind of pitta vata, so fire, water, air, and space. I can be a little bit creative but not so grounding. So when we have grounding individuals coming into our space, then I can draw that to their attention. Like I have to work what she's sharing naturally, I have to work for. And this is why I
Yeah.
have more of X, Y, and Z in my daily routine, where she doesn't need that. Now, what she needs is something that's off the wall and going to push her
Yeah.
into her discomfort and creativity or something like that. So it can be a lot of fun using those archetypes, if you will, and to really help people begin to see others. That's the one thing that I love about Ayurveda. Like, if you ever known anybody to get hangry if they miss their time, and or anybody that has a lot of anger, when you begin to understand that fire symbol or that fire persona, then it's very easy for you to pacify them. And then that also shows you how to pacify that experience inside of yourself,
Yeah.
if you have a lot of irritation or anger. So these are fun things to be applied and to see the world slightly different than maybe what we've been taught to do, because it's very creative and playful.
Yeah, and I think the beauty of having a different lens that someone can share with you, a different lens for you to look through is it actually by seeing life through a different kind of a lens, it allows you to recognize that the one that you've been existing in is not the only one. And so it's sort of it's kind of a soft way to open your eyeballs to the awareness that guess what? This isn't all there is. Guess what? This isn't the only way it could look. Guess what? You have the capacity to make the changes in any direction that you can even begin to envision, and that it is actually within your, I don't want to say control, but it is within your decision making realm how you choose to move through the world, and what do you want that to look like for yourself and for others. And so to have that space where that can be sort of exposed gently by seeing things, I think is a really fun way to share the different levels of consciousness that are available to us that oftentimes I think we sort of go numb to. We get
Yeah.
so wrapped up in day to day, we literally go numb. Like you just don't even, you're just doing the thing. And so it's a good disruptor. It's a really
Yeah.
good disruptor. Yeah. So before we click the record button, it was kind of funny. We were both chuckling about how sometimes being on social media is just kind of a bugger, and that it kind of has almost gotten to the place in certain circles where it really removes the authenticity and genuine connection that can be developed between people. And so you've kind of started a different direction, a different project. And I would love to hear a little bit about that. And you can share with people who probably live a little closer to you than I do that maybe they could partake.
Yeah, so it is an online platform which is hosted on my website. And the purpose of it is to allow for all types of explorers. So it is set up in like a library, but it's a community. So the mission here is for me to pull as many wellness perspectives. So although I love the Ayurvedic lens, that's not the only lens that you can look through to explore and deepen your connection with wellness. So I reach out to all sorts of wellness experts, invite them to come on. They will record videos talking about how they see a particular wellness. There's a lot of authors that have written amazing books that are in there, and we'll do book clubs. So for the first level, you can come in and just like as if you went into a library, look around, and none of these people are going to be aggressive and try to sell you on anything. If you were to leave a comment on their video, for example, or if you were to reach out to them, their hearts are open. They just want to support and help you. And if all you got was a wonderful aha moment from their video, that is enough for them too. So it isn't this heavy sales thing. And then from there, then we have other aspects of that community where you could dive into more of these group-like experiences. So again, there's many amazing authors out there right now, and I keep bumping into them left and right. They've written great books. So to join other seekers, other explorers, and read those books together and then have lively discussions that hopefully evoke more awareness inside of your own journey. And then there's another one for individuals who are going through a lot of transformation. I call it the Phoenix Vault. And because in those ones, we do need times and permission to have everything just burn to the ground. Everything's falling to the ground. And that's part of what the transformation is going to be, like that. Out of all of those ashes, this amazing new life is going to come. And so that's what that whole experience is about, is to have individuals come into that maybe need support or that are there to offer support to individuals who are in that place.
Yeah, and I love that you have it set up like a library. So I live in a little town in the Northeast Kingdom in Vermont. I mean, it's just a little dinky dinky town. And we have this old, what one would call a library, but it's actually, we call it an Athenaeum, which comes, the word is translated originally from Athena.
Uh-huh.
And it isn't just any old library. When you go in, it's an old building and with the spiral staircases. And it's literally almost more like a museum or an archive of some kind. And just to walk through and explore it's pretty magical, actually. So I love the way you've described that you have these different realms within the concept here that give people an opportunity to sort of browse and find what fits and then sort of borrow a little this and borrow a little that.
Yeah.
It's a really great idea. It's terrific. Yeah. So tell us how folks can tap into your library, tap into you, find all the things, get
Well,
more of
one of the best
you.
ways to actually get me, in a somewhat quick, sometimes I'm on social media, but like I said, I use it for something else because I'm highly aware now of how much the dopamine and serotonin levels of our brains are being hijacked on that. So one of the best ways is just to come and see me over at exploreyogahealth.com. And that's where you'll access all of these things and many new things to come, just because, like I said, I'm a creative individual. And once I get one thing done, I get going on the next. So that's a
Sure.
great place
Yeah.
to reach out. And if you ever want to get me directly, it's just Shavani at exploreyogahealth.com.
Perfect. I'm going to put all that information in the show notes. And I'm very excited for you. It's just a very refreshing way to bring a collaborative vault of information forward for people because it really allows you to sort of grocery shop what fits best, what
Yes.
aligns best, what works for you, which in the sea of all of these coaches and healers and people, marketing, pushing, I've got the 10-week program and I have this and I have that. It's very difficult, one, when you know you need help, but you're not exactly sure what that needs to look like for you, and two, you don't really know, you only see what the algorithm chooses to show you most of the time. So it's not that there aren't wonderful individuals out there. There absolutely are. But sometimes I think you kind of get lost in the sea of everything, and it's hard to navigate, it's hard to know. So to have the opportunity, just like when you go into a library, to sort of browse the shelves, so to speak, and see what's there and see what might speak to you before you have to be making any significant decisions is really a wonderful opportunity. It's a brilliant idea, and kudos. So good. Yeah,
Well,
really
thank you.
good.
Like I said, it kind of came a little bit from my own experience of being on social media and having so many people, like the ones that do well, obviously, they know how to push those algorithms and they also know how to talk you into something. And so getting to see how many amazing individuals out there that aren't playing that particular game are being completely obscured by those that are, and that may not have as much richness and depth. I'm not accusing anybody, but I have come across some disappointments on the on social media where they make all sorts of promise, but they're not following through with those. And then, I come across somebody who's doesn't have any of that, and they are just amazing, and what they have to offer is truly life shattering. So, I mean, in a good way, again, in
Yeah,
that Phoenix way where you're going to be rising up out of that box into something amazing. So I appreciate that because, like I said, it came from my own ache. And then I also have had a partner that I work with, and she was a part of Facebook when it first started, I guess. And she said
oh
it used to be something that was very social, very communicative. Like everybody was there to actually connect and share. And it wasn't about pushing our services on others. And that also was a big inspiration to me to see if we could begin cultivating something like that in the wellness
yeah.
world.
Well, it's needed. It's absolutely needed. So congratulations. I think it's a great thing. Really
Thank you.
good. Beautiful. So I will let you go. I appreciate the time you take today. I wish you the very best with the library endeavor, and I will put all of the connection information in the show notes for you. And
Excellent.
I'm looking at the picture behind you, and it just makes me want to take a road trip. Yeah, so beautiful. Thanks again for your time.
Thank you. It was wonderful coming on.